Sobriety doesn't just take something away. Sometimes sobriety opens everything else up next. If you're a sensitive body living in a world that constantly overwhelms you, if you felt mainstream science explains some things but misses something deeper, and if you've ever used anything, alcohol, distraction, disassociation, just to quiet the noise, this conversation's for you. Because when you're sensitive, you don't just feel more, you absorb more. And without support, without language, without regulation, coping can turn into cages.
When you're sensitive, you're open to everything. You hear everything and you see everything. Alcohol was not just something that I was destined for, but something that I went to as a support to help me through being such a sensitive human being.
That's Cat Greenleaf, a journalist with decades in media, including Talk Stoop and the host of Soberness podcast. And someone who understands addiction not as a moral failure, but as a nervous system trying to survive. And sobriety didn't just free her from alcohol, it opened her into service.
When I prayed on who needed the water as much as I did or more, the answer that came was people who've lived in cages could use some water in their lives.
In this episode, you'll discover how sobriety can become a doorway, not just to healing yourself, but to restoring others. How sensitivity can be your compass instead of your curse, and how living in harmony with your body and the environments that regulate it can change lives in very real, grounded ways. So if you feel called to understand what sobriety opens up next, and if you want to support work that turns healing into action, this conversation is for you. Cat Greenleaf, thank you so unbelievably much for being on the podcast with me. You're my first guest after I changed the name of the podcast. So it was the Gutsy Chick podcast. Now it's the Cosmic Body Shenanigans podcast.
So why the change?
I love that I can change it. That's the beauty of having a podcast and being able to change when we need to. I'm sure you understand this since you have
no rules.
Exactly. And Cosmic Body Shenanigans fits so much better for me than Gutsy Chicks because I help men and women. And my guys kept on coming to me and they're like, well, I can't pay attention to your podcast because it's not about me. And I was like, but it is. It is. So, yeah. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. A name is important. So good for you for taking it back.
Right? Reclaim. It's a reclaim. So in that light, Cosmic Body Shenanigans is about people who have sensitive bodies. And I'm curious, Kat, do you identify as someone who has a sensitive body?
My body is way too sensitive. Yes, way too sensitive for this world.
Has it always been way too sensitive? Have you always felt that way?
Yep. In fact, I have. Yeah.
Do you think that might have led you down the path of having an addiction to alcohol?
Without question. Absolutely. I always have thought I was born an alcoholic, and I believe it's to quiet when you're sensitive, you're open to everything. You hear everything and you see everything. And that's very hard to sift through when you're a young person or somebody with no real support in that area at home. And that's my story. And so I do think alcohol was not just something that I was destined for, but something that I went to as a support to help me through being such a sensitive human being.
Do you feel like the people that you've interviewed, not only on Talk Stoop, but also the Soberness podcast, are also sensitive bodies?
I do. Well, I don't think celebrities and notables are different than other people. I do think they've gotten where they are because of heightened abilities or sensitivities. And that kind of star quality comes along with some vulnerabilities as well. And I think that using substances to help a person through their vulnerabilities is pretty common. And so if you're, sort of a high functioning, celebrated person, there are a lot of things that you need, a lot of situations that you need help getting through. So I do see them as related.
Wow. It's fascinating to me because I obviously identify as a sensitive body too, and I have seen myself have these tendencies where I'm going, "Ooh, okay, why is that showing up?" And for me, I get really curious as to what's going on and why, and
Mm.
I've always been that way. But I can
Hmm.
see where someone who is just like, "Okay, I'm overwhelmed. I'm constantly in overwhelm. Now I've got to have something to help me just disassociate,
Yeah.
deregulate." Does that land
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love nothing more than to be deregulated. And it's of course not a healthy choice, but it is a choice. Well, I don't know if it's a choice all the time. It's a coping mechanism. And then also it can be a choice. Addiction is a crazy thing because it's a disease we don't ask to have. We don't have a choice in becoming an addict, but only our choice to stop will
Yeah.
stop it. There's nothing that can come from outside of us and help us. It's really up to us. And I say that with a huge caveat that addiction is like any disease. You can have stages of it, right? Your early stage cancer or your stage 4. If you're a stage 4 addict and your body needs it and your soul needs it and you don't know how to take a single step without it, that's one thing. If you're more middle of the road or early on, a person might have some more fortitude to make the decision to get help and get their addiction under control. But if you're not so far gone and you're in the earlier middle stages, it's a bummer. It's a blessing and a curse that only you can take the choice to take the steps to get this thing under control. And that's a lot of responsibility. And you got no one to blame, unfortunately, but yourself and this crappy ass disease.
You had a guest on Soberness that said something, and remind me who the guest was if you remember, but she said, or was it a he? "I feel like I'm the lucky one because I
Oh,
found the bottom."
yeah. So that was Gabby Bernstein.
Okay.
And she has it right, and a lot of people in AA say that, or in just any rooms of recovery. I haven't necessarily felt that. I mean, I get it. I get that we're the lucky ones because we're alive. I get that we're the lucky ones because we are able to make the choice, because it is a choice every day at this point to not pick up a drink. It's not like, oh, you hit sobriety and then you never have to think about it again. No, it is a daily commitment to, even if it's not top of mind, I still have to pass my refrigerator 100 times a day, in which lives a half bottle of wine that my husband started last night and vodka in the fridge. And I have to decide in the freezer rather, and I have to decide to not do that. But anyway, so Gabby said that she believes we're the lucky ones. I think I would have rather learned my life lessons with some sort of challenge that didn't hurt other people. The thing about alcoholism and any drug use is it tends to have an effect on the people around you. Very often, people you love and don't want to hurt. And so, while I don't think anyone makes it through this planet without learning some hard lessons, I would have preferred mine didn't have all that collateral damage. But you don't get
Did
to choose, right?
you don't. And ultimately, I think it boils down to, were you taught how to regulate your emotions? Were you taught what emotions you were having, and then being guided through how to navigate that? Does that resonate with you?
Hmm. Yes. Although, I'm 53 years old and I started drinking at 12, 13, and it's a hard thing to even consider, right? Am I regulating my emotions when you're a little kid?
No
You're
clue.
just a kid. And right. And my particular brand of not knowing how to handle my emotions was assuming it was all my fault. Everything is my fault. I feel this way because it's my fault. And I can't have a clear thought because it's my fault. And I don't know how to talk to people because it's my fault. And so that's another level of rocks to carry around with your life that don't really help you, just drag you down. And then drinking is this funny thing, right? It takes you away from that guilt for a little until you wake up after a night of hard drinking having to make apologies and having screwed up a bunch of stuff. And then you're like, oh, well, that didn't help at all. But now I'm addicted and I can't stop. So it's not a great cycle.
No, I completely agree. And I totally agree with you when it comes to we didn't have language for how to
Right.
teach emotional regulation to kids. We
Right.
didn't have it until probably the last 15 years. That's when people finally started to stand up and say, okay, there's got to be a better way than having a bunch of people
100%.
move into the world addicted to things, not just alcohol, but gambling, games, screens is now the big thing that people are addicted to.
Yes. I think
And
it's a global pandemic, actually.
I do too. I do too. And I've also had my own struggles with it. We have rules at our house where, we don't bring phones to the table. We don't bring devices to the table when we're all sitting down to eat. And yet I catch myself still doing it. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, I can blame it on, and this is where the blame game comes in, right? I can blame it on the fact that I'm an entrepreneur and I have things that I have to constantly do. And I can blame it on my ADHD and the
Hmm.
fact that my brain needs to know what time it is so that I know what's next and how to regulate the rest of everyone else's time in the house. But it's an addiction.
Or you could just wait till after dinner to do that.
Right. Or put a clock in the darn room. That I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, why don't
Right.
we just put a clock in here and then I'll be okay? Because that's what I
Right.
use the phone for in that instance is I need something to look at so that I know what time it is. I know
Right.
how much time
And
we have to eat. I know how much time we have before bedtime because I have an 11-year-old.
yeah, the phones have become so normalized. I think that all those justifications end up holding a lot of water in our brains. But the truth is, like, legions of entrepreneurs before you and me made it through without their phones because there were no fucking phones. You know, it's like the world happened before and still will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And for people to realize that that's an addiction too. Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the bigger issue because immediately people assume that addiction is alcoholism and you're going to end up on the streets as a homeless person. It's
Right.
drug addiction. Same scenario. Well, I'm not homeless. I have a cell
Right.
phone. Oh, a lot of
Right.
those homeless people have cell phones too.
Right, right. Well, it is definitely the great equalizer, you know. I mean, and everyone's addiction to it is rooted in the same thing. You know, it's made to be addictive, like cigarettes or alcohol, or it's got that quality. That's how it keeps going.
The hook.
But as grown-ups who made it through a lot of our lives before phones were introduced into the mix, I think just like alcoholism, the choice is ours. We have the power to make that decision. I refuse to give my power over to the screen. If I am indulging, I know I'm indulging. I'm indulging. I look at my phone when I shouldn't, and I don't even care. But, again, the choice is mine.
Exactly. It's a choice. That's
Yep.
probably one of the best lessons is it's a choice. And when our prefrontal cortex is finally on board right around 25 to 27 years old, it's a choice. But
Yeah.
before that, it's not. Before that, it's I could use some better boundaries and some
Right.
better guidance
Yeah.
around what in the world is going on and why. So at 12,
Yes.
you started drinking. When did Talk Stoop become this fantastic idea in your brain to be like, okay, I need to start talking to celebrities on my front porch?
Well, what happened was my first son was born in 2009, and I was already on NBC for a while. I was a features reporter. I had a little niche carved out there, and I just didn't want to be away from my son. And so the fates conspired, and one evening I was talking to my husband about, gosh, and my kid was just born. And I was like, I really don't want to be out of the house. And I got to come up with an idea. And he's like, yeah, you should come up with an idea. And then I swear, in the morning, this idea was like waiting for me. It was fully baked. I saw the whole thing and I went into the newsroom and pitched it, and nobody responded. Nobody said anything. Nobody looked at me. Everyone just kept working. So I just
Oh,
started shooting it. And yeah, I just started doing it. And I at first spoke to my neighbor who was an author, and I talked to her about what you do with writer's block. And then my mom was in town because my son was just born, and she had written a book 30 years prior called Help, a handbook for working mothers. And so it seemed like, well, for the anniversary year of this book, and I'm now a working mother, and we can have an interview about that. So she was one of my very early guests. But it wasn't until probably like 2 weeks after I started the show that I ran into Rosie Perez, the actress, at an event. And I just walked up to her and asked if she'd want to be on the show. And she said, sure, come on, you'll stoop. And she did. And that is what started it, because Tommy Lee, the musician, then ended up in a taxi cab, because my stuff used to air in the back of taxi cabs. And he saw it. And I guess he told his publicist he wanted to be on that show. And that was my show. And so he came on, and then it just went from there. And then all the publicists wanted to get all their people on, because the cabs were a hot ticket. Before you had video on your phones, the cabs was like the TVs there were the only thing that was going to entertain you while you're on your journey. So everybody watched. It was just sort of a special time in New York and other cities that had the cabs. But it was, we were it. And so it became pretty popular pretty quickly.
I love that. Okay, so 2009, I'm thinking about Tommy Lee specifically. Was he with Pamela then?
I don't think so.
It was post Pamela. Okay. All right.
I think it was post Pamela. Yeah.
He's not a sober person, is he?
Gosh, I'm not totally sure. Actually, I don't think. I'm guessing no.
He hasn't been on Soberness, has he?
I haven't had him on Soberness, but I would, whether or not he's sober, because our tagline is now freedom from fuckery. In the same way that you changed the name of your podcast, at the end of last season, our first season, I was like, I got to talk to more people. This is very depressing, and I need to open it out, and I want to have a little bit more fun. And so now we will talk to anybody who has freed themselves from whatever it was that was bringing them down. And so, we had on, let's see, Don Lemon. Don Lemon was talking about being freed from corporate media. We had Clay Aiken on, who was freed from caring what other people think about his music or his sexuality or his politics. So we had E. Jean Carroll on, who sued the president for $100 million. And so she's freed herself from the fuckery of the guilt and shame of being raped by Donald Trump. So, wide open these days.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that you've made that flip. I wondered, okay, so when you think about celebrities and sobriety, it's not a lot of them have escaped, it seems like. So you're very limited on how many people you could potentially.
Well, it's funny. We had Tom Arnold, the actor, on last week, and he said, Hollywood is a great place to get messed up, but it's also a great place to get sober, because there is a lot of strong recovery in the entertainment business. What's unique about people in entertainment getting sober is very often they have to do it in public, after having had a pretty big flame out in public. And that's a special type of hell that not everybody can relate to. Although now, with YouTube and everyone's worst moments being broadcast all over the place, I guess it's a little bit more common. But my hats are off to anyone who's gone through anything in public that is less than flattering, and anyone who's decided to make it their goal to get better for themselves and their families, and then also for their fans. And so that's who we celebrate.
Yes, that's beautiful. And the way that it absolutely should be.
Yeah.
When it comes to the society we're in now, you can't escape a video camera, whether it's, a surveillance camera on the street or in an elevator. That one's the most craziest one to me. Or you're a public figure constantly being run down by paparazzi, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, these are really weird times we're living in, when anything you do can be recorded, and then not only just recorded, but broadcast, for the whole world to see. I just watched a documentary over the weekend called Predators, and it was about To Catch a Predator, the show, which, of course, we want to stop people from child trafficking, but at the same time, we don't have to ruin their lives over it. Their lives are already ruined. We don't have to put it on TV and ruin their lives even farther. And look, I love TV. I've worked in TV for 30 years. But this whole thing of blowing up people's lives, whether it's YouTube now or regular TV, gives you pause, right? Like, is that what the technology is for? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And I think the next generations coming through, your kids, my kids, are going to change that.
Yep. I hope so. I hope so. I'm
Yeah.
trying to instill that in my kiddos that, we use media for good, for the light, but there's a lot of darkness online too that
Mhm.
is hard to combat.
Well, and I feel like the original darkness was our media, our news, actually. And that's one of the biggest shifts that we're seeing when it comes to kids and
Mm.
teenagers and 20-year-olds is that they don't watch the news anymore. And frankly,
No.
I don't either because it's not, I will every once in a while watch local news, but global news, national news, nope, hard pass.
Yeah.
I will find out what's going on through other channels. And then if it's worthy of something that I want to dive down and find out what else is going on, I go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like that's where we're headed. It's
There's
more
certainly
self-worth.
plenty of choice in how you get your information these days.
Yes. Yes. So true. So, do you feel like media and culture had any influence over your processing of being addicted to alcohol and then also becoming sober?
No, because I'm sort of an isolator, and that's not unique. A lot of addicts like to isolate. A lot of people like to isolate, but I've been kind of a lone processor now for many, many years. I'm not on social beyond what I put out for the show, uh, and and every alcoholic is unique. So what someone else's experience is their experience. And so I haven't actually tapped into the media it's funny, I haven't tapped into a show like mine to help me in my own journey. But now that I'm doing a show like mine, it has helped me in a very personal way, meaning the guests and their stories have been so inspirational to me. And because I'm a broadcaster by training and by DNA, basically, I would hear information and thought I was just the conduit. I was just the channel to get the information and package it up and give it to the viewers or listeners. And that's how I always was. It didn't occur to me till very late in the game in Talk Stoop that, oh, I too could benefit from some of this information. I too can learn these lessons. I just thought it was just my job to get the lessons and pass them along. And so with soberness, I am really using the time with the guests to learn their stories, to see how it affects my own sobriety and if I should do what they did. And so I didn't do that before. I guess I'm such an addict that I have to be in the real heart of things in order for it to finally make an impression. I need like that mainline information. I couldn't just sort of take it from a third party, which sounds super arrogant considering that's what I'm trying to have people do, take their stories from my show. But that is just sort of how it's been for me.
I love that that's the answer because I expected it to be the opposite. Since
Yeah.
you were in broadcasting, since you were a journalist, since you were constantly being inundated with the information so that you could go and interview those people. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
you're an open channel. I love that the information just flows through you. That's how I do my interviews too. And I go back and listen to my podcast because in the mix of it, while we're here doing the interview, I'm not taking in the information like I would if I was the listener. So I go back and I listen.
Right. Oh, good. Oh, good. So
Yeah.
you're your own first fan. That's awesome.
Right. And I
Yes.
really like my podcast.
Mhm. Well, that's really important. You must, you must.
Yeah.
With anything you do, if you're choosing to do it and you don't love it, it's not going to sing. It's not going to help anyone.
Exactly. Yeah. I completely agree. Okay. So what's the number one thing that you've learned from your guests on Soberness Podcast?
It's really been surrounding guilt and shame. So guilt and shame, are close cousins to me. I've had plenty of guilt and shame to carry around for my life and just assumed I kind of would always have it. And then two guests in particular who came on the show helped me to start staring that down. The first was Dr. Drew, and he broke down the physical aspects of addiction for me. He said, if a brain can be diseased, why can't you see addiction as that kind of disease? You wouldn't be mad at yourself if you broke your leg. You wouldn't be mad at yourself if you got cancer. You wouldn't be mad at yourself for physical maladies. So why spend so much time being so ashamed of this disease that I had nothing to do with getting? Now, that sounds very neat and easily digestible, except that the weird thing about addiction is it was still me who was pouring the drinks. It was still me who ordered them. It was still me who didn't say no. So,
Mm-hmm.
and because I know I do have the power to say no, it leads to a murky area. But anyway, when he
Yes.
broke that down for me about the physical realities of being an addict, that helped. And then when I had Daryl McDaniel, DMC from Run DMC, Daryl McDaniels, he talked a lot about guilt and shame and addiction. Really, sorry, let me rephrase that. He talked a lot about addiction just as another part of your personality, something for you to know, to have, to work with, to deal with. It's not something to be shrouded in shame. It's not, I'm not the only person out there who's ever overindulged. I'm not the only one who deals with this. And it shouldn't be so heavy that it keeps me so isolated from the rest of the world. And after hearing the two of them, it started to let in the sunlight a little bit for me. And it has helped me to free myself of the weight of my past. And that's been great. I can't say I'm totally there yet, but but I'm getting there. I'm getting closer to not feeling like I'm me plus every day that I lived before today. I can just sort of be me in today. And that's a better feeling.
Well, I feel like it led you to something, this guilt and this shame actually led you to something pretty astonishing, pretty beautiful, which is the work that you're doing with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I will tell you that story because what happened was we moved out here to Coney Island. So I live in Brooklyn. We used to live in downtown Brooklyn where the Stoop was, and now we live in Coney Island. And it was a very lucky, magical real estate moment where we were able to find a place directly on the water. And much less expensive than we were used to live in downtown Brooklyn. And it's, we can park our car. Anyway, it's a much different life. It's sort of a suburban life, but in the city, and it's right on the beach. And I can't begin to explain how profound the impact of living with the water was on my family and on me. It's just changed everything. It's changed everything. When we moved out here, I had a lot of healing to do, and my non-scientific calculation is that any healing a person has to do, if you can do it by the water, you do it 33% faster. That's how it felt. It felt like it just hastened the healing, and it certainly made it more enjoyable and prettier. And, I come from a long line of guilty, privileged people, and the privilege being that I'm healthy, the privilege being that I have all my teeth, the privilege being that I was able to go to school. I have a lot of privileges in my life, and I have also carried a lot of guilt with that. Like, how did I get to go to school and have a family and have a house as opposed to somebody else who didn't have any of those things? Why is it that I'm healthy and someone else isn't? And so anyway, the guilt never has totally dissipated there. And I was appreciating where we lived and how we lived so desperately. And I just thought, how can I share it? It cannot just be for me. It doesn't even make sense. It's too gorgeous. It's too amazing. How do I help people live by the water?
Yeah.
I don't have any money. We're not a real estate development family. I didn't know what to do, but I know how to be scrappy. And so I went outside and I was praying. I was talking to the ocean. How do I share it? What do I do? And basically the message that came was to do what I know. And what I know is how to renovate houses that need TLC, I know how to find affordable real estate because I spend a lot of time looking for it. And so I found some undervalued houses by the water in New York City. We self-funded our first project in order to try the theory. So the theory was we'd buy these houses, we could hire formerly incarcerated people to work on the property and live on the property throughout the life of the project. And the reason why formerly incarcerated is because when I preyed on who needed the water as much as I did or more, the answer that came was people who've lived in cages could use some water in their lives. And so that started it. And then what we do is once the houses are renovated, we make them available to Section 8 voucher holders, to government subsidized housing voucher holders. And that way, people who probably wouldn't have the opportunity to work or live on the water before now can. And as far as I know, we're the only freestanding Section 8 waterfront properties in New York City. I keep trying to get a definitive answer on that, but there aren't a lot, you know. And so, yeah, that's what we do.
How beautiful. And it was born from your own experience. It was born from who you are and all the things that have made you who you are. That is so, so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much for appreciating it. I love it. I love that work so much. I'd love to do much more of it actually, you know, because we're nonprofit, we're dependent on donations, and I am not a fundraiser by nature. It's just not my skill set. So I am hiring somebody, a development person, and hopefully we can keep the dream going because it's pretty cool to see it all come together. You know, it's cool when the people show up to help work and they sort of can't believe it. And then it's cool when the people move in, families, you know, I have 3 single moms, each that have 4 kids in our houses, and that feels so cool.
Yes. Oh, okay. So in the show notes, we need a donation link.
Yes, thank you. It's called restorativehousing.org, restorativehousing.org. And it's restorative because it's hopefully restorative for the people who get to work there, who live there. It's obviously we're restoring the houses and we're preserving some New York City waterfront. You know, the neighborhoods I'm in aren't necessarily vulnerable to huge development, but you never know. And so we're preserving kind of affordable housing along the shoreline in New York, which feels good too.
That, yes. I mean, when I think about New York, I think it's completely surrounded by water, yet there's no houses on the waterfront. And you
Right.
managed to find them.
You know, we are a water town. It's an archipelago. You know, there's just little islands everywhere. So I live in Coney Island. My big project is on City Island, and I'm actually hoping to start working on Rikers Island in my work. My side hustle is bringing recovery meetings into prison, and I love it so much. And Rikers is kind of my next where I'd like to go next. Islands everywhere.
They are. They are. If you've ever done a boat tour in New York City, you see them all over the place and you're going, okay, that's Governor Island. And what road is that island? And
Roosevelt Island. And yep, they're everywhere.
exactly. Cool. All the presidents have an island.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully not all.
Right?
Whoops. Sorry.
No, that's totally okay.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yes.
Although he's hoping Manhattan is his island. So I don't know.
Yeah. There's yep. So many things I could say. I will refrain from saying
Different show.
now.
Exactly. Different show.
Exactly. Well, what you are doing, Cat, is just beautiful and born out of you, out of your experiences and out of the life that you've led, which, as amazing as it is, I know you're carrying that guilt and that shame piece. Understanding it and learning from it, not only from your guests, but from your own experience, and then doing something like restorativehousing.org is stunning. And thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely. If there's one piece of advice you would give your former self around where you're at now, what would that be?
Yeah. Oh, around where I am now?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. Listen, if I could talk to my former self, I would be less easy on myself, to tell you the truth. I think there are a lot of ways we're obviously way too hard on ourselves, unrealistically hard on ourselves. But also, I know I could have probably stopped drinking a little earlier. I know I could have tried to get my emotional sobriety under control a little earlier. And I think I was a little too easy on myself. So if I could give myself any advice, it would be turn up the heat sooner. Turn up the heat sooner. Addicts love to fall into like, well, I'm an addict and that's why. I don't know about all addicts. This addict likes to do that. Like, well, I pretty much knew I was an alcoholic. So I was like, well, this is what alcoholics do, right? So I'm just going to keep going. I don't think I needed to do that. And I think I would have suffered a lot less, and people around me would have suffered a lot less had I gotten it together a little earlier. So if I had some advice, it would be to get to it sooner.
If you would have been harder on yourself then, when you noticed, when it came up and it was like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic, this is what we do. If you would have been harder on yourself, do you think you would have ended up doing what you do now with the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people?
It's so hard to say. I probably wouldn't have had the time to do it because I would have been off doing other things. Part of what allowed me to sit on the beach and to have this time to put together new ideas was that I was out of work. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was, sad and lost. And so I think I probably wouldn't have ended up in the exact same place. Impossible to say. I love what we're up to today. I love the things that I'm growing together with my family that we're growing. But I do think my late bloomerness is not necessary. I've been such a late bloomer on so many things. I wish I would have turned up the discipline a little sooner. But I didn't. So here we are.
And here we are. I mean,
here we are, right?
Holy cow.
Yeah.
What
Could
a
be
cool
worse.
place to be.
Yes. No, you're so right. Look, and like Gabby Bernstein with the, we're the lucky ones. I know that is the right thing to think. And in my life, generally every day, I'm definitely a glass half full person. But when it comes to things that I think I had a hand in, my outlook is a little less sunny.
The channel took over. The guides knew what you needed.
I hope someone did.
Oh yeah. They shoved you in that direction and said, you know what? This right here, this is the thing she needs to be doing. And holy cow, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we could say the same for you and what you're doing.
It's a ride. It's a beautiful, beautiful ride. And I have the same proclivities as you. I'm very hard on myself. And when I look at, this is the path I've taken. Being an aerospace engineer probably delayed me from doing the real thing that I was supposed to be doing. Right?
Yeah.
And, it sounds good on a resume. It looks good to others. They go, oh my gosh, you worked for NASA. Like, yeah. And my life was hell.
Why?
Because it was a roller coaster ride of, do I have a job from week to week, month to month? Because government dictates what jobs aerospace will have and won't have. And I was also a contractor, which I absolutely loved because I didn't have to live to the bureaucracy of what everybody else had to deal with that worked in the company. And you're the first one on the chopping block. Yeah.
Right. So, everything's a trade-off, right?
It was a huge trade-off because I got paid more and I had less bureaucracy. I thought I was the winner. But the trade-off was we're constantly in the swirl of, are you going to have a job this month, next month? In fact, I was let go right before I got married, and I came back from my honeymoon, and they'd called me up while I was in Greece, and they said, "We want you back."
Great.
Yes, and I was like, "Do I really want to go back? Not really, really, but I will, because right now I don't know what the next step is." I was working on becoming an entrepreneur at the time. Crazy wild road. And I ended up back on the program going, all right, I'm back. And I called my old boss and he was like, great. Who are you working for? And I was like, well, I thought it was you. So this will be entertaining.
Oh, no. They're really whiplash, huh? You're fired. You're not fired. You're fired.
Yes. Well, I was back and I didn't know who my boss was. I didn't know what department I was working in. I didn't know who hired me back. It was a trip. Yeah. Aerospace. Yeah. It's a wild, wild ride. And it led me to here. Just like,
you feel better?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I know that this is my purpose, which is a question for you. Do you feel like what you're doing now with the restorative housing and working with incarcerated people Do you feel like that is your calling, or is it still doing the journalism piece, or
Well,
both?
it's a great question. Yeah. I've been a journalist for so long and I love it so much that I would say that's my calling. Without question. However, the industry has changed so much. It's not what it once was. I don't want to feel like it's behind me, which is why I'm doing my show. But if if it's not, let's see, if it's not working out to the extent that I want it to, meaning if the show's not going to be paying for itself before long, if I'm not hired onto another show that someone else is paying for altogether, as opposed to self-funding like I'm doing now with my podcast, then I need to be realistic about that. And that's been a very challenging process. You know, like I said, I love what I'm doing with restorative housing. I'm this side hustle when I bring recovery into prisons. I'm actually now going back to school to get my master's in forensic mental health counseling because I really want to be more deeply involved inside prison. And so, right. So I love it and I do, and I'm excited about that. You maybe can only have one first love, right? And broadcast was my first love. So is this my calling? I don't know. That was my calling. So I'm not sure right now. And let me tell you, it is not a comfortable place to be.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
don't like it at all.
Liminal.
I
Yes.
don't like it at all. I'd like to
Yes.
say, yes, working in prison is my calling and that's it. And I found it and thank God. But I am in transition right now. And so I'm not quite there yet.
I'm going to have to ask you in a couple of years
Yeah.
because
And I hope I can say yes. I hope I can say, yes, I have found it. And thank God broadcast didn't go the way I wanted it to. But I'm not there yet.
yeah, it feels like one of those many hats that we end up wearing throughout our lives. So my
Yeah.
first love was softball. And, you can't play that your entire life.
No.
I tried. I did try. But, my podcast isn't on softball. It's, it's on talking with sensitive people and helping sensitive people really understand what's going on in their body and their mind and their spirit. And I love what spirit has rolled you into in this life. And I seriously cannot wait to find out after you get
Thank
your
you.
master's degree.
Yes, God, right. From your lips to God's ears, I'm now taking my prerequisites that I can even apply. I don't have any psych credits on my old transcripts, which are old because I'm old, So I'm taking, but
You
I'm
still
enjoying
count.
it. Of course, I still count. Oh my God! Listen, I think talking to incarcerated individuals is not so dissimilar from talking to celebrities. You're talking to people in extraordinary circumstances, people
Mhm.
who've had extraordinary backstories often that bring them to these highly unusual circumstances. And I am hoping that what has made my career successful in talking to celebs is going to help people behind bars equally strongly. I hope.
I
Think so.
completely agree with you. They are definitely, they're similar and dissimilar, and the similarities cross over so heavily that yes.
It's
Yeah.
wild, eh? Yeah, and so I do think I'm suited for the work, and I love being. It's strange, but I love being in prison. I love being with the people there. I've had some of the most extraordinary experiences just in the understanding that their life is so different. And what's wild about it is, as a drinker, all the times I drove drunk, which make me sick to think about, but I could have been one of the women in my recovery groups. It could have been me who went to the club that night and didn't want to pay for the Uber to take me home. So I was just going to drive. And then you wake up and you're handcuffed to a hospital bed and that's it, and that could have been me. And so I'm grateful that it's not me. Uh, but it's also fascinating and heartbreaking to be in the world with people who that is their reality. And frankly, I am humbled to be around them. They are survivors. Everybody that I've worked with in prison seems to be a victim as much as they are a perpetrator, because whatever led them to the point in their lives that they did have to take the actions that got them incarcerated, they've survived stuff too. So I think the message is that we're all the things, we're all the
Mhm.
victims, we're all the perps, we're all the light, we're all the dark.
Yep. Yep. In my eyes, and where I've gotten to in my life, the way that I see things is it's neither good nor bad. It's
Yeah.
data. It's information to use to make a choice.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it
That's
is.
it.
It's not I can look at those people who are in prison and know some of them belong there and some of them don't. And when it comes to the belonging there, that's part of their path. Just like you didn't end up where they are. That was your path.
Right.
So that
Right.
you could pull them up.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, listen, they need all the pulling they can get. It's very depressing in there,
Yes.
obviously. And but a lot of people say, oh, we shouldn't have prisons. Yes, we need to have prisons. We need to have
Yeah.
prisons. People who are destructive got to get taken out of the gen pop, out of
Yep.
mainstream life,
Out of
right? So they're not out there
mainstream.
hurting
Yep.
people.
Exactly.
The piece that I know vexes mostly everybody, and certainly me, even at the very beginning here, is a lot of the people there are really sick. They're mentally really sick. And
Yes.
being in prison doesn't exactly help. It's not like it's super therapeutic. And
Nope.
so I don't know what the answer is, man. I don't. And I've decided, just like I've stopped asking, why are we here? why is, what are humans for? I've stopped asking those questions. And so I've stopped asking the larger questions about prison and trying, hopefully, to make my mission doing what I can while people, once they're already there, doing what I can. But it is a real problem, when you meet people who aren't just wantonly destructive, they're really sick.
Yep.
I would say a huge percentage of people in prison seem to be have
Mentally
a
ill.
serious mental health issue and or addicts,
Mhm.
and it's hard to get sober in prison. People think, oh, well, you work with people getting sober in prison. That must be easy because they don't have access. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
they
there's
do.
always a way. There's always a way.
Exactly. It depends on how desperate you are and what you want to
Right.
get.
And listen,
Yes.
as an addict, I would want to check out the second I crossed that threshold into prison. If that was in my life, I would want to be wasted every minute of the day. So I
Yes.
really understand.
Yeah. To disassociate from the chaos that you've now become a part of.
Yeah. And so the people who do stay sober, again, I'm honored to be around them.
Yeah. They're making huge strides in their life. Huge
Hopefully,
strides.
yeah. Hopefully, that's the goal.
That's the goal. Exactly. That's the goal, to help them get to that point, to see that there is a light, but
Yeah.
to let them know, like, your struggles that you've gone through and the fact that you're taking the time and doing the work and potentially getting out. Those people have done huge things in their life to shift where they were to where they are.
Yes.
Yeah. I have mad
100%.
respect for those people.
Yeah. And listen, they exist, right? They're still here on the planet. Whether or not you think, well, they're bad or they did something bad or they're weak or doesn't matter. They exist on the planet. My personal belief is that God doesn't keep us here just to watch us struggle. So they deserve just as much saving and helping as the people that they've hurt.
Completely agree. Yeah. Kat, thank you for the work that you do in the world. Thank you for the path that you have gone down to get to this point right here. It's amazing. And
Thank you.
I truly hope you know how amazing you are at what you're doing and how you're affecting those that you're touching, those people that you have connection with.
Thank you. I'll work on that. I'll work on that. Well, and again, and likewise to you. Sounds like the work you're doing is very important for your clients and, of course, your listeners. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that.
I hope we talk again.
Me too.